Wow. You certainly had to deal with some sinister ways. However, apart from that, please share with us how the mission went. And tell us if you received any good responses afterward.
Yes, I felt the mission went very well, and it was a tremendous success, and it could not have gone better. We got feedback, good feedback, from an unusual source. Here it is, please read it. It was a press release issued by our friend Alan C. Atkins on the 11th of September 2001, which was a notable date, as you will recall. Here, please read it, Rachel, or get Daniel to read it.
Preaching to Prisoners Including Those on Death Row, New Bilibid Prison, and Philippines, by Alan Atkins, correspondent from Manila, the 11th of September 2001. When first learning of the intended visit by self-styled evangelists and former lecturer, David Clark, from Fareham, Hampshire, and Gordon Smith from Merley, Bournemouth, England, to the Philippines, a number of resident foreigners were angry and dismayed. This was not for the fact that the pair wanted to share their experiences of conversion to Christianity that was their business. Rather, it was the deeper motive of purportedly attempting to assist in the early release of David Clark's brother, Michael Clark, from the hellhole that is called New Bilibid Prison, where he had been sentenced to serve 14 years. The angry resident foreigners, all of whom are involved in fighting to obtain justice for men of foreigners falsely convicted in a country where the justice system is decidedly faulty to say the least, believed the visit would be detrimental to their own efforts. Initially, the pair was to be accompanied by Albert Wilson, the Dover resident who had obtained acquittal and release from a death sentence just 18 months previously. It was believed that certain local vigilante organizations, which had been screaming after his acquittal, would have drawn adverse publicity, which would have hampered the efforts of the locals. German, Harry Just, and Britain, Alan Atkins, had dispatched angry missives to David Clark stating that they both could not see just what good the mission would achieve. Both believed that it would set the cases of incarcerated foreigners back, as living here for many years, they fully understood the Philippine psyche. Vocal criticism by foreigners would lead to the Filipino authorities digging in their heels, just to show whose country it really was. David Clark, in particular, had a genuine reason to visit. There is little doubt that his brother, Michael Clark, convicted of running tours for pedophiles, was cleverly encouraged to make a silly, facetious remark while being secretly filmed by a British television company needing sensationalism. The self-styled pedophile-busting priest, Father Shea Cullen, gleefully seized upon the case. Cullen, who has a huge property overlooking Subic Bay, obtains millions from donations to support his children's home, which, incidentally, only contains between 26 and 36 children at any one time. Michael Clark is only one of the high-profile convictions he has obtained against alleged foreign pedophiles. Each conviction is accompanied by fanfare overseas, mainly in Germany and Italy, and results in a massive inflow of cash. Many of these convictions are being questioned. The nemesis of Cullen is German national, Harry Just, whose Filipino wife owns a small restaurant on a local beach. Just initially battled Cullen over the conviction of what Cullen claimed to be the first foreign pedophile to be jailed, Australian Victor Fitzgerald. Over the years, Just has worked to get the appeal granted. Just last week, Fitzgerald, after 8 long years, was released on bail with a retrial ordered. Fitzgerald's accuser, who was then only 13 years old, but is now 21, issued an affidavit 3 years ago. It is a horror story. She tells how she, and 2 other girls whose cases against Fitzgerald were dismissed for lack of merit, were kept prisoner in Cullen's children's home and continually coached in the evidence they would present and how to act hysterical while in front of the judge, etc. How she and one of the other girls escaped and went to the Olongapo mayor's office, but Cullen had warrants of arrest issued and they were forced back to the home. She gave men a more detailed events of coercion and admitted that her evidence was all lies, given under the threat of never being released from the home. In an unusual move, the local bishop and 21 priests appealed to the Court of Appeals stating that they believed that Father Cullen's methods were questionable. For his troubles, Harry Just has been the victim of vicious attacks both in the press and on internet from Cullen, who has labeled him the leader of a pedophile protection ring. Other cases have emerged, and local observers are now saying, when is a pedophile not a pedophile? When he is convicted by Shea Cullen. It is interesting to note that a Scottish MP has nominated Father Shea Cullen for the Nobel Prize. The Fitzgerald retrial may well decide him to withdraw this nomination. Quickly, David Clark, learning some of this, had every right to visit the Philippines and assist his brother. Michael Clark, now claimed to have also been reborn, was being baptized in an oil drum in the prison yard. David Clark, before arriving, did make one concession to local fears. Discussions dissuaded Albert Wilson from visiting with him, so one problem was out of the way. David Clark and Gordon Smith duly arrived and met with their Philippine hosts and coordinators to begin a massive program of preaching, not just in Bilibid prison, including to prisoners on death row, but also in various areas within reach of Manila, including the cities that used to host the huge US bases, Angeles City and Olongapo City. In these places, they not only preached in various nonconformist churches, but inside the jails. To the amazement of their local critics, they achieved an amazing success, especially in the prisons. Literally hundreds of prisoners expressed that they wanted to learn more about the gospel and themselves be saved. The religious will say this is a miracle. To the cynical, analysis tends to indicate just how big a failure the Catholic Church has been in the Philippines. In the Philippines, well over 80% claim to be Catholic. See article in Honor and a Privilege, the 29th of April 2002. Indeed, most will have been baptized in a Catholic church, yet as over 54% drop out of school in primary, and even those who go to Mass will only listen to the homily. Most of them know very little about Christianity. The fact that two very ordinary men, not wearing the magic vestments of priesthood, relate in simple terms, stories and the meaning of what is in the Bible, must have a huge impact. For the first time in their lives, they understand what being a Christian really means. What makes it even better is that David Clark readily confesses to them that 30 years previous, he was an incarcerated criminal, and that he discovered Jesus on an LSD trip. These men could, and did, relate to him. He was one of them, once. David's book Converted on LSD Trip has just been published, which tells the whole story. The critics have been silenced and instead applaud. Both David Clark and Gordon Smith carried out their mission with dignity and respect for the Philippine people, and in fact, had proved to be a credit to the British people. Positive results have been achieved. They have suggested a scheme where prisoners can enter the ministry and preach in other prisons. This is under consideration. If their scheme is adopted and prevents recidivism, then their mission will indeed have been worthwhile. Alan Atkins, the 11th of September 2001.
Well, David, what a commendation. However, let us go on, as I wish you to tell me about the revolt that took place in New Bilibid prison in 2003, and the subsequent opposition that you experienced afterwards.
Yes, okay. It is important for me to tell you because it was this opposition that led to us being discredited as Christian workers. And as a result, my colleagues in the UK, when they heard the bad news and bad feedback from the New Bilibid prison, this led them to forsake us, and they resigned from Trojan Horse on their return to the UK in January 2003. It is important to tell you this. I'm of the opinion that it was this opposition, coupled with my sad separation from my wife in the UK, which had lasted for 5 years, that affected me, and also the opposition affected Michael. Michael, who fell into depression afterwards, which eventually led to his death through tuberculosis. I then wrote all about this revolt, which was my daily diary of the Trojan Horse Mission to the Philippines, published in 3 volumes, 1, 2 and 3, called Before the Cock Crows. And this was circulated throughout the whole of New Bilibid prison, where there are 12 gang leaders, and each one was given a personal copy of this book, along with the elders of MBPCC who rose up against us. I too fell into a deep, unfathomable pit of depression just 5 months after Michael's death in October 2005, and all our work seemed to come to nothing. I was to remain in this state of death for a period of 5 years until the end of 2010, during which time our mission work remained dormant in the Philippines and the UK. And it so happened that had Michael lived and served his full sentence, or 16-year sentence, he would have been released at that time. When I received notice of my redundancy from my job at Mobile Tracking Systems in 2010, I was feeling much better and was able to rise out of my death, so to speak, in order to write Michael's story.
Are you able to tell us about the opposition you experienced in New Bilibid prison, or should we leave it till the next interview?
Well, yes, of course, I can tell you. However, I have written about it and published it
in Before the Cock Crows, and the 3rd edition of my book Converted on LSD Trip, and such were some of you, including Borstal Boys,
which is a must-read for those interested in the theological and practical religious errors of those religious groups in New Bilibid prison who opposed us.
It was due to these religious errors that led to the opposition that we experienced.
So David, now let us get to the matter of your crimes and what you did. Because to hear about it sounds awful, and no doubt your friends may well be embarrassed.
Okay. When I decided to write Michael's story, I realised I needed his past criminal record, and I believed that this story needed to be told. I needed a full account of his past record, and all I could do was to get it from the police. There was no other way, and is no other way. I've even written to my MP Mark Holden to look into this matter. The story is very important and could be a great help to many people. I have much to say about all our work, and I have a lot of unfinished business to do, not only in the Philippines, but also the UK. So the truth about our mission needs to be told, and all my friends need to read the account. Please, my friends and family that read this, please read our story.
This story could be of real help to judges, magistrates, psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, doctors, social workers, solicitors, policemen, ministers of religion, lecturers, teachers and probation officers. Also, it could be helpful to Christians and those who suffer from manic depression or dyslexia. It could also be a means of help to reformed criminals and useful to those living in the margins of society, along with unruly youths, drug users, and hardened criminals, as well to anyone contemplating or going through divorce. Well, David, your story is truly remarkable and worth telling. Your son has asked the question, was my dad really converted on an LSD trip? It really is a story of a brother's odyssey of crime, manic depression and Christ. What do you wish to become of this story, now that it is told?
Well, that's a good question, and I will give you my answer. The epitaph on Michael's tomb says the following: Michael John Clark, born September 27, 1946, died May 27, 2005, 58 years old. The first Trojan warrior, inmate, New Bilibid prison. He being dead, yet speaketh, which is a quote. It is saying that the blood of Christ speaks better things than the blood of Abel. Abel was murdered by his brother Cain, and his blood cries from the ground, vengeance. But the blood of Christ cries peace, which is better than vengeance. I know Michael forgave Shay Cullen and told him so. However, there are some who want vengeance, and I believe many want justice. Well, I would like both, but I'm not out for vengeance, and I'm willing to do all I can to help. Alan Atkins has just said that he really hopes that there is a God. He says this because it appears that this evil bastard, Shay Cullen, will not be punished in this life. I hope that many people will hear Michael's story and listen to the message that was brought to you by this Trojan horse. Then our plight will not have been in vain. Michael now is a captive set free, and I am out for neither vengeance or evil, but rather the good of all. Let all who hear this testimony contact me in the UK. David Clark, 27th of October, 2011.